Hello, welcome to episode 78 of the Oikos Family Podcast. Today I'm talking to you about December, January, February of December 2020 and then January and February of 2021. In the previous podcast, I shared with you from September, October, November of 2020 because I'm doing some podcast catch-up right now because we didn't do a podcast from September until now until episode 77, which is the one just before this one. And there's lots of reasons why we didn't, but I shared some of that in episode 77. In episode 78, I would like to share with you from December 2020 through to now, which is March 2021. Because a lot of interesting things have been happening, and I thought, why not share them on a podcast? So here I go. In December, we were now pretty much settled with our printing and our printers and all the rest being in a different location. You can imagine the adjustment of that because we were printing and manufacturing and all of that at Oikos. And now all of a sudden, this was all happening offsite in a different place. So there was a lot of adjustments to our whole workflow and just figuring out how to do it all. And as you know, because of the pandemic, we were working remotely mostly. So we also had to adapt to remote working, which was very different. But we did it. And we had to adapt to our printing being done somewhere else and then being delivered. My goodness, that took some adjustment. But we did it. And then early January came along and it was 2021 and we entered into this new year with the realization that the pandemic was still with us and it was going to continue to be around for some time. And all these adjustments and changes that had taken place in the previous 6 months of, the last 6 months of 2020 actually, were all part of preparing us for 2021. But, you can't see when you're in the midst of it and you facing one wall after the next, that actually pushing through and pressing through that is going to be a good thing. In the midst of it, you don't necessarily see the good on the other side. But when 2021 arrived, we realized, here we are. Now, lots of establishment of new ways and new things had taken place, and we were settled in, and now we were going to be able to just do the best we could with 2021, considering all the challenges that were still perhaps ahead of us. We felt we had, grown and learned and been strengthened through the previous 6 months, and we were feeling a little bit more equipped, a little bit more prepared, rather than the surprise elements just coming one after the other. So at the beginning of the year, we thought, right, let's try do this shipment. Let's try do an import of what we need to import, and in the hopes that it'll come. Again, with the knowledge of we don't really know what's going to happen, but let's do the best we can, and we'll put in our import order. And we did so on the 7th of January. And here we are on the last day of March 2021, and that import has not yet arrived at Oikos. And it's been quite an interesting time, to say the least. Importing has really taken on a whole new set of challenges with regard to just getting goods in from other countries to here to South Africa. But in spite of that, we did it anyway, knowing that there were very, very big risks attached, as in, will we ever receive it? What will happen if the ports are closed? Basically realizing that a repeat of hard lockdown in April of 2020, how that hit us, that, how do we know that's not going to transpire? Again, we don't know. But what we do know is we must do today what we can do today. And today we can put an import order in, so let's do that. And so that's what we did. And then we waited. And then lots of interesting things happened. One of the places where we ordered from, the order was lost. I mean, literally, they could not find it. It went missing, completely missing. Our order in the States to come to us here in South Africa just went missing. Eventually it was found. So that was 6 weeks later, we found it. Not we, whole chain of people working together to try and find out and locate where did these missing packages go. It was eventually found and loaded on the ship. And then lots of interesting things transpired with regard to that ship. It was basically, it started feeling a bit like a comedy, because one day you would hear that the ship had been recalled, and then I was getting emails that just made no sense. The one email that I received said the ship has been rotated for integrity. And I thought, now, well, what does that even mean? And whoever asked what that meant, nobody could tell me what it meant. So you see, these are the sort of things that were happening. It was, okay, well, the ship has been rotated for integrity, whatever that means, but we'll wait. And we're still waiting, by the way. The ship has not arrived at our Durban docks for the goods to be offloaded and sent up to Oikos. Here, we are up in the Midlands of KZN, KwaZulu-Natal. So that's just what's been happening with regard to the import. Very, very interesting. I could go into many, many details of the walls that we faced in that regard. But the other thing that was happening behind the scenes of that was us being able to just continue printing and seeing to it that we could get these books onto the shelves and into parcels and into your hands. And that's what we were continuing to just try and do as best we could. And again, our print service provider, who I have spoken about in the previous episode, the previous podcast, they were all doing their absolute utmost to just keep that wheel turning. And, this was a whole new field to them. They hadn't done this before. And so we were spending a lot of time with digital communication, digital training, and doing screenshots and screen sharing and all these things to actually achieve what seemed to be the impossible at the time. But the good news is it was done, and the impossible became possible. And what is even better is the result of that. The result of that is now a whole team at work to keep delivering the resources that we need to be able to serve and support the families that we would like to help in this journey that they're on with home education and keeping their children at home and raising them and training them and teaching them within their home. And we know that there's a lot of families out there that were suddenly surprised and had to adapt to completely new ways of having their children at home and not having them go to school. And we knew that Oikos was here to help those very families, to say to them, you don't need to panic, it's okay, we can help you. We can let's keep it simple, and let's give you what it is that you can use in the meantime just to get into the lifestyle and get used to this change. And that is why I think God really wanted us to persevere through those previous 6 months, because He knew better than we do, because none of us know what tomorrow will bring, but He did. And He knew that we needed to persevere, and He knew there were going to be many families that we could help in spite of ships being rotated for integrity and printers not working and whichever other wall it was that we faced. It was smashed down, and we were able to press on and continue being able to help you and serve you. And in the meantime, the people within Oikos as well were having to make all kinds of adaptations, just like everybody can understand what that means now. There's not a single person that has, globally, I don't think, that has gone through this pandemic without it affecting them in one way or another. And so I don't have to go into any of those details, because I'm sure everyone has their own unique experience of how this pandemic has affected them personally, or within their livelihood, or within their family or relationships, or whatever it is. And so all those effects in various forms were happening to the members of Oikos as well, the Oikos team, having to work remotely, and others having to put in double the amount of work, literally, even more than double, actually. And yet, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, I just feel we have all grown and we're all better for it. We're not worse off. One could say, if you look at it in the natural, that we're worse off. But I believe spiritually we are in such a better place. That's what my personal experience has been. And I just hope it's the same applies to all the people that have been involved in helping Oikos to continue to be able to serve families in this time and during this time. And I was just so thrilled to be able to have the opportunity now, finally, after all of this time that we've been through of such incredible challenges, that I finally was able to be able to come and sit and talk to you via this means of podcast and just share this with you and let you know how very, very, very pleased we are that we are still here to be able to continue to serve you. And it's with the help of so many people to have made it possible. People, as I've mentioned, that did not even have to do it. They weren't obliged or anything. They just decided to dive in deep with us, and that is what they have given. And this whole team has come together to just continue to make this possible. So I just think that is a very, very good thing. I think it's just excellent the way we've had to pull together, the way we've had to adapt, the way we've had to change. I know human nature generally is they don't like change, but maybe that's also something we need to change our thinking on. Maybe we should embrace change and be glad for it, because I feel it's certainly grown us. My goodness, I've had to do some steep learning curves that I never ever knew was going to come my way. I never even imagined it would be even something I ever needed to consider. And here we are today, at end of March 2021, with so much unknown still with regard to the pandemic and the future and everything else. But yet there's this constant assurance of the fact that He is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. He is the same. And it's that very consistency, that very thing of complete consistency, that has actually helped us to remain stable at times when we felt completely derailed, thrown off the tracks, complete train wreck. But His consistency remained the same, yesterday, today, and forevermore. So that is just the truth of that has been so powerful, even though I've been aware of that and just know the truth of that. Let me say I know the truth of that, of Him being the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. I know that truth. But have I experienced it in the same reliance that I needed to depend on that in the way that we have the last 6 months? That is where I feel there's been such tremendous growing and strengthening. So I just think it's been a good thing. And I am very, very pleased that we can continue to serve the families that He has asked us to serve and support. I know that support comes in so many shapes and forms, and I know one of the supports systems or structures that we can give families is to be able to provide them with the resources, to give them that help, that aid at home, to be able to have a resource that they can just feel comfortable with and confident with and safe and all those good things. And that's why we spent these past 6 months just persevering, do what we have to do what must be done to be able to keep delivering and offering families that. But I do believe alongside that, the other kind of support, the different support that looks different to that, is the one of the spiritual support, the help, the strengthening, the joy, actually. You know what? That's the other thing. Is He says in His word that His joy is our strength. So if we lose that joy, if we become depleted in that joy, we become weak. And so I just thought through this time, joy is so important. We've got to keep joy in place. We mustn't become despondent or depressed or miserable about the walls in front of us. Let's just enjoy smashing them down, actually. Let's have fun. And I mean, I'm sure those of you who know Oikos well enough by now will know that fun is really up there on the list for us. That's why we have a lot of board games on our website, so that we just try and encourage families just to have fun, play games, enjoy the journey. And I know so many testimonies I've been hearing over this time, how families have come to discover that in a new way, rather than just being on this rushing life from one thing to the next. They've just stopped. And they've got to know their children in ways that they didn't before. I listened to somebody yesterday sharing something about how they were having meals with their daughters, their young adult daughters at the table. And it was the first time they'd been doing this, ever. Before that, they didn't have meals together as a family. And now they were. And this one small thing, it seems, is such a big thing in their families. And that just excites me. I just think, well, there you go. You see, it's that sort of thing is that Oikos is here for, is just to keep in place that what is important to God for them. Not forget about that. Yes, we can keep providing other areas of support. And yes, they are very, very important. And that's why we gave our time and attention to them, to make sure that they stay in place for you. But in the event that we didn't even have that, if we didn't even have the resources to continue to help you with and support you and serve you, if we didn't have those, and all that we had left was to be able just to encourage you and remind you of what's important to God and what He wants to achieve and do in your lives, then I believe that can never go away. That is something that God has given us to share with you. And I do believe that that is something that He has been strengthening us in during these past 6 months, even though we were doing very practical things like sorting out printers and learning new software programs and learning how to work remotely and how to continue keeping our team strong, even though we feel so fragmented, basically, and disconnected. We've had to find ways to keep going. And those very practical experiences, I believe, have given us spiritual strength. It's strengthened us spiritually to ultimately be able to continue to serve Oikos families, to serve families, Oikos or any family, anywhere, and to keep encouraging them in His truths and what is His priorities for them and in their families. And so I don't know what the next 6 months is going to look like. I do know that we've worked very, very, very hard to keep the resources in place for you, because we know that that practical tool is incredibly supportive and helpful to you. So we've got that in place. And I'm really hoping that the next 6 months will be a time where we can continue to support you with other. I don't know that it will be, because this last 6 months certainly wasn't that. But I am seeing the broader, bigger picture of how the last 6 months is going to help us, has prepared us basically to continue being there for you, to support you in your journey, continuing throughout the rest of this year. Because I think we all have a sense of realization that this pandemic is with us for the rest of this year in a way that we are all still having to adapt to learning how to live with it. So we are here for you. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and just to get you all caught up in what's been going on in the last 6 months here. As I mentioned, the previous podcast to this one was 3 months, and this one was the next 3 months. And now here we are in April. Well, it's not quite April yet, but soon to be April. And in fact, these podcasts will only go up in April, so it will be April when you're listening to this. And I look forward to just starting to share more podcasts with you. What I would like to ask is if you have special requests of anything that you would like included in these podcasts. You'd like to hear about something specific. If there's something you've heard within this podcast that you would like to know more about or hear more of, there's plenty more. You can imagine a 20-minute or something podcast is a very quick summary of 3 months of tremendous trials. So whatever it is that we can help you with, that you think that we may be able to help you with, well, that's what we're here for, is to hopefully support you and help you. While I was sharing this podcast, I was having a cup of tea. And I hope you are going to enjoy a cup of tea with me in the next podcast. And thank you for joining me in this one. And see you next time. I won't see you. I will enjoy chatting to you in the next podcast. Bye for now.